Hello and welcome to the LaLanne Pass It On podcast. My name is Greg Justice, and I am here with the star of the show, as always, Elaine, LaLanne. How are you today, Elaine?
Well, I'm great. I'm no star, but we everybody's a star, and we've got a star today. I'll tell you, Joe DeSena, and I want you to tell us about him, because then I'm going to tell you what I know about him. Okay.
Well, absolutely. Like Elaine said, Joe DeSena is our special guest today, and he is the founder and CEO of Spartan, which is a leading global endurance sports brand. Now, from a young age, Joe showed an entrepreneurial spirit, establishing a multi-million-dollar pool cleaning business before venturing into Wall Street and then launching his own trading firm. In 2001, he left Wall Street for Riverside Farm in Vermont, where his passion for adventure races led to the creation of Spartan Race. Joe is a New York Times bestselling author and recently released his fourth book titled Extreme Balance, Paradoxical Principles That Make You a Champion, with one of my favorite wrestlers, Ben Funky Askren. So I look forward to talking to him about that a little bit. Joe, it's a pleasure to have you as our special guest today.
Thanks for having me on. I view LaLa as my guiding light in life. And so when she calls, we drop everything and we are on the phone. Let's do it.
Okay. No, you know what he said? I didn't know that you were a pool man. Do you know who had pool men? And he had a lot of, my son John, when he was going to Pepperdine out in Malibu, he had a pool business, and the business was going, I mean, super, making a lot of money. And then he's decided to make surfboards, and he graduated from Pepperdine, but he's making the most beautiful surfboards, and he's a pro surfer. But and here you are, a pool man too.
That's how I started. That's how I made my bones when I was young. I used to clean swimming pools for all the mob bosses. And everybody wanted to look like your husband. Everybody wanted to be fit. Even the bad guys wanted to be fit. And I built a hell of a business.
Speaking about the bad guys, I got to tell you guys a little story, and everybody. When we lived in Hollywood, Jack and I loved to go to the movies. And then on Hollywood Boulevard, down the street, were some, I think they were into, I don't know, they were not on the up and up. I think they were not, they weren't gang, but we walked by them, and they had a little store there, and we knew they weren't with the, might be dealers, who knew what they were. But you know what they said? Hey, Jack, hey, wait a minute, Jack. Then everybody wanted their autograph. But the movie theater was right around the corner on Hollywood Boulevard, and this was on a side street.
Told you, everybody wants to be fit. Doesn't matter what you do for a living.
I know it doesn't make any difference what you do for a living.
Probably make a better bad guy if you're fit.
Well, hey, I want to start with your new book because I come from a high school and college wrestling background, and your new book, Extreme Balance, is with one of my all-time favorites. He is very unorthodox in his style of wrestling, which is how he got his nickname Funky. I love Ben Askren, so I'd love to hear about that process, how that came to be, and then let's talk a little bit about the subject matter of the book.
Yeah, funny enough, I did a podcast early in the pandemic with Ben, and we got to know each other. And during that conversation, he said to me, so this has got to be 4 or 5 years ago. He said, look, I've been thinking about a topic for a book. You've written a bunch of books, Joe. Would you be interested in collaborating on this topic? I said, what's the topic? He said, many of us, when we think about, sports psychology or business psychology or just life psychology in general, we think there's one way. We listen to influencers, we listen to, conferences, we read books, and we're told there's this one way. You've got to be extremely fastidious and organized. You got to be willing to kill your competition. You got to work 24 hours a day. You can't sleep. All these things we're told over and over, but nobody has ever talked about this idea that maybe there's contradicting things we should be doing. So, for example, yes, we probably should be extremely organized. We should plan. We should be fastidious, but should we also be ready for anything and malleable and willing to move when the earth moves on us? Yes, we should. But that's a difficult paradox to reconcile, right? Here we were, the coaches of our famous swimmer. I'm clearly getting old, Michael Phelps, and the coach wanted him in the water. The coach wanted him winning his events, but the coach realized I also have to train him to be ready for anything. So I'm going to break his goggles without him knowing. I'm going to lose his bag without him knowing. I'm going to screw up his flight tickets without him knowing, so that when we get to the big show, he can handle tough times as well as really organized times, right?
I learned to think on my feet. That's called, I call it thinking on your feet. Because, when I was on television, early days, we were a mansion, Sutra Mansion up on Twin Peaks in San Francisco. People would get lost all the time. Before, when we were in the mansion, we were in the ballroom of the mansion. And that's where we had our broadcast before we went downtown and got and got actually into the building and offices. But I would go out and, my gosh, this person isn't showing up. What am I going to do? So anybody I would see, I would grab them. I say, "You're on." And everybody has a story. And so it doesn't make any difference who you are, what you're doing. You've got a story to tell. And so I decide that's what I'm going to do. I'll just, if I get in a bind, I have to think on my feet. And
I like that. You need to be able to think on your feet. You also need to be obviously well planned, well organized, and stick to that plan. But to your point, when the going gets tough, think on your feet. And that's a tough paradox. Another tough paradox is we want to crush our competition. That's what we've been told, right? We can't let them breathe. We got to wipe them out in order to win. But you also have to respect your competition. And that's a difficult paradox to reconcile. So the book is about these really challenging paradoxes that most people don't think about. Like there's a famous wrestler named Kyle Dake. LaLa, you'd like him. And for 2 Olympic cycles, he had a really difficult time getting on the U.S. Olympic team. There was a U.S. Olympic team teammate named Jordan Burroughs that he just couldn't beat. And so for 8 years, he wasn't in. The third try, which I think was 11 or 12 years later because of COVID, I don't know if it was 11 or 12, he finally won. And he leaned over in those last few seconds of the match with Jordan Burroughs sitting on the mat, and he said something that no one could hear in the audience. And I asked him afterwards, I said, "What'd you tell him?" Because you probably wanted to step on his neck because you finished him off finally after 12 years. And he said, "No, I told him he made me a much better wrestler. I respected him. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have got this good." And so again, a difficult, challenging paradox to how the hell am I going to want to kill him if I respect him? How am I going to respect him if I want to kill him? So anyway, that's what the book is about.
That's what we do in golf. That's what we do when I was on the golf team. And I always respected the good golfers, but I wanted to win. And I was determined I was gonna beat this girl. But that's in my mind, but I respected her. This is what Jack always did with the people in the business. There's a lot of people that went and opened up their own gyms. They were students at Jackson. They went in Oakland and opened up their own gyms. He always respected them, always patted them on the back. How's it going? And that's what life is all about. People want to everybody has their own path to go down, right?
Absolutely.
agree.
Yeah. And so that's chapter 8 in the book, by the way, respecting your opponents and crushing your
You
opponents.
know that Jack was a wrestler?
I did. Yeah, he was actually, Joe, you may not know this. He was actually on the 1936 Olympic wrestling team.
I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
going to Germany. And then because he had opened his gym previous to that and was a professional, they stripped him of being able to go to the Olympics.
I remember because if you took one penny, just one penny, I remember this so well, you're out. So
Wow.
he was on the wrestling team. He was a very good wrestler. I've got a 1936 AAU champion wrestling in his class.
I love that.
Talk about people coming to you for a book. Greg, I met him, and then we got to know each other through the National Fitness Hall of Fame. And so he said, he was such a fan of Jack's. He says, we really should. I'd like to write a book with you, and on pride and discipline, and the legacy of Jack LaLanne. And I said, oh boy, I just finished a book with Jamie Brinkus, and but it sounded so good that I said yes. And so another 3.5 years later, we finished this book. So I was writing books for like 6 years.
And we've got more ahead of us, don't we?
Yeah, I'm writing. I didn't think I could write. Did you think you could write when you started writing?
I did not think I could write. I remember I was with Richard Branson and I was working on the first book and I was editing and going back and forth. And somebody said to me at that moment, you'll never get it right. So you might as well just publish the damn thing. And they were right. You just gotta, at some point, you gotta say, it's good enough.
And you gotta be you.
Yeah.
You can't. My first book was they talked me into it in 1986 when I was 60. Life begins at 50 or something like that. And so I had so I had what's his name, Richard Benyo. I wrote a lot with him, and so he would write. But I'd edit, and I really learned to edit. And it's
well, now you have ChatGPT.
Yeah, we got. I'm too wordy. I was started out being very wordy, and then found out we don't need this word. We don't need that word. Let's get down to the meat of it. Like Jack was a one-liner person.
I love it.
Hey, Joe, let me circle back a little bit earlier when we're talking about expecting the unexpected. Because I think there's a story in here, and I don't think Elaine, we were talking before the podcast, she doesn't know this story. In the book, I think this is a direct quote, be prepared, but always expect the unexpected. And about 25 years ago, you had prepared for an adventure that you ended up getting lost in the wilderness way up north. And I'd love for you to share that story with the listeners and LaLa.
Yeah, I was with a team and we were in northern Quebec and it was 30 below zero for 7-8 days. We were in the middle of a race that was unsupported, and we had climbed through the night to get up to the top of a mountain. And I had never hallucinated like this before, but for most of that hike through, waist deep snow, I smelled McDonald's. And there wasn't a home within 200 miles of where we were. But I could swear there was food coming, but it wasn't. And then, this is even crazier, I started to see my grandparents. And I remember thinking, I was hallucinating so much. I remember thinking, what are they doing here? Well, they clearly weren't. weren't there. Anyway, we get to the top of the mountain and we're about to rappel off a rock face, which is well over 1,000 feet, maybe 1,500 feet. And the ropes had detached from the rock face. And thank God the team that was ahead of us was so sophisticated and so knowledgeable in climbing that they felt that the rope was loose a couple of 100 feet down. And so they were able to break and stop themselves from, falling to their death. So anyway, we found ourselves in a situation where we needed to then hike back down or wait. And so we decided to hike back down but humans being what they are, we decided to take a shortcut, quote unquote shortcut. And that shortcut turned out to be turn into a life and death situation. We ended up tumbling down this mountain and finding ourselves in a very precarious situation. And a friend of mine was helping me. I was hanging from his snowshoe off a cliff. I mean, it was very hard to describe. You had to be there, but it was a touch and go situation. It really made me appreciate life when it was over. It made me realize how stupid we can be at times.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have tried the shortcut. I think it was probably my idea. And yeah, but it also helped me pivot my life. And I was so thankful, and I pinched myself that we get to do this, that led to the start of the business that exists today.
But I want to tell you one little story. When I lived in Minneapolis, Minnesota, when I was growing up, it was probably in the early 40s, like 1941 or two. And my brother, my two brothers and I went to a movie, and we came out. It was the worst snowstorm they ever had. And the streetcars weren't running. We took the streetcar down, and the buses weren't running. Cars weren't going. And I had moccasins. It was a beautiful day when we went to the movie, came out. We had to walk 3 miles in the snow, and it was up to over my ankles. And we stopped in a drugstore and bought washcloths to put around my feet. And to this day, my ankles when it gets cold, my ankles get really cold. Anyway,
Wow.
I want to know how you, what prompted you. You gave us one idea, but so what from there, where did it go? Your idea.
Well, so this is 25, 26, almost 30 years ago, the story I was just telling you. And from there, I started to play around with this idea that maybe there were 50,000 people like LaLa, Elaine, like Joe DeSena, like Jack Lane, that would be willing to take on an adventure, willing to do something, seemingly crazy. Maybe there were 50,000 of them, but I would build a business around these 50,000 and put on challenging events, because those 50,000 in my mind would inspire the rest of the world to put their sneakers on and go do something. So that was the impetus for the beginning of the business. But the first 10 years, I was completely wrong. I couldn't find 5,000 of them. Nobody wanted to do my crazy events. That first race I put on with Richard Branson down in the British Virgin Islands, or not far from his island, and I lost a person. A person physically got lost for 8 days, drifted away in a little boat. I found him with the Coast Guard 8 days later on a deserted island, 150 miles away. And, at that point, I should have said, gee, I'm probably not cut out for this business. It's way too dangerous, but I stuck with it. And eventually 10 years later, I changed the format, lowered the threshold to 3 miles, 5 miles, 8 miles, shorter distances. And 700 people came out, and then 1,500 people came out, and then 5,000 people, and it became a thing.
Well, I was at your big event in Vermont, and it was horrendous. And my assistant Claire was with me, and she did the big one. She took her over 12, I think it was 12 or 14 hours.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, and but what I was so impressed with your little voice your boys, there, you had a course for kids.
Yes.
And they had a little, it was wonderful. So all the kids could do the course, and then the adults that wanted to do it, and I was just a bystander because I wasn't not that was I wasn't going to do the course. I was, of course, in my I think in my 90s, so I wasn't my early 90s.
Well, I remember you were knocking out push-ups like people eat French fries. You were doing.
Yeah, I could do push-ups. I can do jackknives now, really, very.
Really?
I don't get down on the floor because you'd have to pull me up like this. But um I still do my jackknives at 98 and a half.
I
And
love it.
I got too I can't die yet because I got too much to do.
I know. I know. We got a lot of stuff we still got to get out of you.
So
Joe,
anyway, Joe, you're a big I want to I was talking to Greg earlier. I said Joe has passion and dedication for what he does. Everything he does, there's a lot of passion in. And Greg came up with discipline. Remember, and he's the one that talked me into pride and discipline. And that's one of Jack's sayings: pride and discipline. Pride in what you're doing, what you're into, and the discipline to follow through on it. You know.
yeah,
So
what we were talking about, Joe, were the parallels between Jack and you. And Elaine immediately said passion for what he's doing, dedication to it. And then I said, well, and then obviously the discipline to do it. Because you live a life that obviously you're very passionate about it, but you believe firmly that comfort is the enemy of longevity.
I do. I
And
do.
talk
Comfort.
about
Yeah.
that.
Comfort and complacency kills.
and believing. Jack was great when you have to believe from every fiber of your body what you're into. In other words, you just don't go into something to make money. You go into something that you're passionate about, that you love, and that you think is going to be helpful and fun or whatever. Um, so
I agree. If you have a why, if you have a passion for it, it makes the tough times, and they are tough. Whenever you're doing anything worthwhile, they're tough. It makes the tough times easier. You got to have a why. I said recently, could you imagine if I had to work at a factory making cigarettes or handbags or high heel shoes? I don't even know what I would do with myself. Like I would have no passion for those things. I love what I do.
So, talking about putting yourself in an uncomfortable situation or maybe timing just being real bad was right before the pandemic, you ventured into a new business, which I happen to have participated in 2020,
Nice.
DECA. Your timing was a little bit tough with that one because of the pandemic. How did you navigate those waters? And tell us about DECA, why it came to be.
Well, I'm still a bit underwater from the pandemic. We're still trying to clean up some blemishes that occurred. It's been 4 years, so that's going to take a little while. But DECA, the idea came from one of our guys internally. He had this idea for functional fitness. He said, "Look, not everybody's going to want to do the obstacles outside. We need a gateway drug. We need a way to get them in. Let's put on these events that have 10 stations. So you ski erg, rowing machine, burpees, crunches with a med ball, and let's run them through it, and we'll score it. We'll score each person, and we'll be able to compare the scores around the world. And it's taken off. It's doing really, really well. Super, super exciting product, and it enhances what we do, and it's on brand because it's getting people moving. So I'm a personal believer that you're not going to get people to do the work they need to do if they don't have a date on the calendar. Jack LaLanne, LaLanne, you, me, we could talk till we're blue in the face to get people to put their sneakers on in the morning. 99% of them aren't going to do it. They'll give you 100 excuses why, unless they have a date on the calendar. If they got a date on the calendar and they're scared and their friends are doing it, it's coming up, well,
Yeah,
then their reputation's on the line.
right. You're absolutely right. We put things off. Okay, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. Tomorrow never comes.
That's right.
If you've committed someplace and you've committed to a friend, I'll be there, or you've put it on your calendar, you're going to be there.
You're going to be there.
I love your idea of doing it inside like that, because I'm better at stuff like that. I mean, I still do pull downs. I do get on the treadmill, and I go on the treadmill every day, and then I do all these little things, and it's a challenge for me. And a lot of times I don't want to do it. I think, oh, I don't think I'll do it today. And then I think, oh, well, I better. And I'm so happy after I get it done. It's you kind of pat yourself on the back. Oh, you did it.
Yeah.
And you're so proud of yourself. But there's a lot of days I just, I want to eat my breakfast and don't want to go out there.
I know what you mean. We all experience it. Well,
Yeah.
we gotta come visit you. We got to get you guys out to a couple of events. Anybody listening, by the way, to you guys, anybody you want to give some free entries, complimentary entries to any of our events, I'm happy to do it.
Joe, one last question here.
Yep.
So I'm a big fan of a TV show called Shark Tank. And recently came across a new show that I didn't know was on CNBC called Entrepreneur Elevator Pitch.
Yeah.
See this guy, it's like, whoa, I know him.
That's funny.
How did that come to be? I love watching the show and love watching you on it.
What is that all about? Tell us.
Yeah. So basically, if you had an idea, if LaLa had an idea, she goes in the elevator and she's got just while she's in the elevator, she's got to make her pitch, the quote unquote proverbial elevator pitch. And so I was fortunate enough to be one of the, we'll call them sharks, and folks, business folks and entrepreneurs were coming up the elevator, and it was super, super exciting. We had some fun. We got to see a bunch of startups, and yeah, the show actually does well. My friends over at entrepreneur.com created it, and they're good folks.
And it's on CNBC. And
Nice.
yeah, I enjoy watching it. It's a lot of fun. So, Joe, where can people learn more about you, DECA, Spartan, and everything you've got going on?
Just go to Spartan.com or shoot me an email, joe@Spartan.com. Happy to help, support anybody. Never going to let money get in the way of you getting healthy. Going to push you. Make sure you get up 4:30 in the morning, take that cold shower, go on that run, do the hard stuff. And as Elaine likes to say, earn your breakfast.
That's right. Speaking in the elevator, Jack would lift his leg and go, bing. He never, ever punched the button.
Wow.
He just always put his foot up and punched the button wherever he was going.
I love it.
So I hope that everybody will sign up and learn more about Joe's all the elevator and all the elevator pitch. Now what would I say in the elevator pitch?
I think you'd be selling us on salad and push-ups.
Yeah. And jackknives.
And jackknives.
And with your wealth of knowledge, Elaine, I'm not sure that a minute for your elevator pitch would be enough. So I think we might give you 2 or 3 minutes to
Yeah,
get all.
well, Jack says my wife likes to run. She likes to run off at the mouth and run up my bills. So I'm trying to be very good and not run off at the mouth so much.
I love it.
One quote, Joe, that I've heard you tell the story about being lost up in the wilderness more than once. And one of the lines you've used is that's when you learn the difference between a difficult situation and a desperate situation.
I remember. Yeah, I remember I remember when that came into focus in my mind. One of the guys I was with had climbed Everest, and he looked at me and said, "We are in trouble." And I thought, if he's saying we're in trouble, we're in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a good distinction
Yeah,
between
yeah,
desperate.
yeah.
I know how you felt, because when we were Jack and I were married in 1959, and we finally went over to our friends in Hawaii, and we were on the other side of the island of Honolulu, and there was nothing there, no hotels. And this is 1959. So we sat on the beach, and I went out. I said, I think I'd take a little paddle. And in between, there's the waves were really high here and really high here. And I took this little paddle, and I'm going out to sea. I'm turning around, trying to paddle back. I can't. Two guys to come and get me. I could have been left. I think it was one of those. I don't know, something that drags you out to sea. Well, I felt like I was being dragged out to sea, and
Wow.
I was rescued, and I kind of, you do get kind of, everybody was laughing, and then all of a sudden they weren't laughing at me, because I said, I'm not laughing anymore, because I was laughing too, but then I think I'm going out to sea, and
Yeah,
and
riptide. You got pulled out in a riptide. Yeah.
yeah, I did. Holy cow, that was scary.
Well, you guys are amazing. LaLa, you inspire me every time we talk. Anybody listening that gives a bunch of excuses about why they can't do this or can't do that should just listen to you more, because you're still going and doing more stuff than most people do in their 20s.
Yeah. Well, God bless you, and I certainly admire you, and he has the most beautiful wife and children, and they're all grown up now, and the boys are probably
We got one boy in California. Is at Stanford. The other boy's coming up quick, and the two girls are playing soccer, and
yeah,
it's happening fast.
yeah. So it does. Well, anyway, gosh, thank you very much for coming with us today, and passing it along, and we're so happy to pass your life along, so other people can know about this, and that's what Jack wanted us to do, is pass it on.
Pass it on.
That
Thank you
was
so
that.
much.
Yes. Thank you, Joe. Jack's message was to pass it on. Spartan's mission is to help people live without limits. And so, Joe, we thank you for your time today, and just really appreciate you getting on and sharing some of your story.
Thanks for having me. I'll see you guys.
Okay.